currency of relationships, pure and impure. So this is similar to the discussion yesterday evening. Yesterday evening we discussed 6 habits that destroy your peace and sanity. That was the title. It's a, for new people kind of title, because it was describing nectar of instruction, Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashati, 6 characteristics that destroy bhakti. So this topic, currency of relationships, is developing some very simple ideas given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu about rasa. But for a newer audience, it's relationships. And by design, the title has a funny sounding title because relationships aren't thought of in terms of currency. But there's a reason you'll see as we go along why it's currency of relationships, pure and impure. Exploring the wisdom of ancient India on relationships. This topic has been presented to completely new people, like college students that really don't know too much about bhakti life. They don't know too much about Bhagavad Gita. They certainly don't know much about Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but they have some idea about relationships. Everyone has some idea. So this is taking that idea that people have about relationships and lifting it, and then lifting it, and then lifting it. The teachings are based on the writings of Rupa Goswami, who we see here writing. And interestingly, some of you may know this, but the invocation verse of the entire Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has a double meaning. Rupa Goswami is dedicating this book to Sanatana, which can mean the personality of Godhead, who is the eternal Sanatana, or his brother, Sanatana Goswami. And that's the relationship that they had. Although Rupa Goswami was the one we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya explicitly says twice that he empowered Rupa Goswami to understand everything about transcendental knowledge. That's pretty intense, to understand everything about transcendental knowledge. And then that he empowered him to write everything about transcendental knowledge. And further, he instructed Swarup Damodar to instruct him in detail about the science of relationships, or science of rasa. So Rupa Goswami is the most exalted, although by his exaltedness, he's looking up to Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami writes in Brihat Bhagavatamrita that one of the principal characteristics of an elevated person is dainya. Dainya means humility, and the way that Gopi Pranadana Prabhu has translated is utter humility. And Sanatana Goswami writes that humility ushers in prema, and prema ushers in humility. So they both can be said to be the cause of the other. He writes it directly in the verses of Brihat Bhagavatamrita. So Sanatana Goswami, being the elder brother, the younger brother looks up to him. And being the elevated soul that Rupa Goswami is, he's dedicating his teachings that he received from Lord Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar under the instructions of Lord Chaitanya to his brother in the invocation verse. Very nice. The loving exchanges amongst elevated persons are filled with love, and they're filled with humility. Very nice, very sweet. Okay, so we'll begin with very simple language that college kids and anybody that's new can understand to help us understand relationships. So we'll start here. What's a relationship? A relationship, one simple definition, the common basis of interaction between two or more people. The common basis of interaction between two or more people. That's a relationship. And common basis generally means there's a commodity of exchange or currency that all parties agree on. Of course, in relationships, it may be business, like you see this handshake, or other kinds of relationships where I scratch your back, you scratch my back, we have a nice relationship. And if one stops scratching the other's back, relationship may be broken. So it's contractual. It's a common basis of exchange between two or more persons. So this purposefully, commodity of exchange is a business term. And in many cases, relationships are business-like, commodity of exchange, or a currency that people agree on. So, go back in time. What's the currency that people used? Things that were of substantial value. Let's say gold. Or let's say, I'm a carpenter, and some man calls me to his home and says, could you build me a new door? My door is broken. I grow grains. I can give you 3 bags of grains. You just replace my door. And I take a look at the door and say, you know what? I can fix it for 2 bags of grains. Okay, 2 bags of grains, you fix my door. Very good. So there's some exchange. Some currency that all parties agree on. And so, currency today is what it is. But it's a relationship, an exchange between two or more people. Without a common basis, there's no way to relate. Thus, no relationship, or at best, a dysfunctional relationship. So this is showing two people trying to relate to one another, but the connection isn't working. So there's a dysfunctional relationship. Just taking the terms one by one. And then exchange implies, is this important, while both a subject and an object, in the relationship, the roles of the subject and object alternate. That's a relationship. Sometimes one is addressing the other, so that's the subject and the object, and then the roles reverse. The other one that was the subject now becomes the object, and the object becomes the subject. Is an exchanging of roles. That's exchange. So taking that general definition. Are you with me so far? Nobody's lost yet. Should I go over it again? You're okay. Okay. So now here's the object, in this case, that invisible baby in the baby crib. That's the object. And all the people crowded around the baby crib, they're the subjects having a relationship with the object. Only the object's invisible. So the object, this is just grammar, and it's true in Sanskrit grammar also. I'll give you a nice example in a moment. The object is the person to whom action or feeling is directed. That's the invisible baby in the crib. And the subject is the person who acts or feels. Now I'm going to just go offline because it looks to me that there's not too many new people in the room yet. So I'm going to explain this subject-object language in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3, Verse 28, is that very celebrated verse. Ete chanksa kalapungsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. You're all familiar with that one. Is anyone not familiar with that one? Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. That's what the verse says. So we'll back up. Canto 1, Chapter 1, there's 6 questions asked by the sages of Sutta Goswami. One of those 6 questions is, please describe the incarnations of the Lord as they appear in this world. That's Canto 1, Chapter 1. And Canto 1, Chapter 3 begins with a response to that question. And the response to that question begins, Chapter 3, describing the Purusha avatars. What's the Purusha avatars? That's the forms of Vishnu that attend to creation. Mahavishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu, who attend to creation. So those are the Purusha avatars, or Vishnu forms in this world. And then following those three Purusha avatars come some of the other categories of avatars. Some of the other categories of avatars include the Leela avatars, celebrated Das avatars. There's Shakti-Avesh avatars, some are in that list. And interestingly, it's not a really long list, it's a very incomplete partial list, where both Krishna and Balaram are said to be avatars of Vishnu. Right? You with me? Then, after saying that, of all these, ete means, referring to, it's a pronoun referring to all of the above. Ete cha angsa kala. Angsa means a plenary portion. Now, Prabhupada has translated kala as a portion of a plenary portion. That's a little confusing, perhaps to some. Sridhar Swami makes a commentary on that verse and says the word kala refers to the avatars who are empowered, jivas who are empowered, and he gives the example of Narada Muni, Prithu Maharaj, etc. So those are jivas that are empowered with potency of Vishnu. So that's what Sridhar Swami says, that's what kala refers to. So Vishnu tattva forms, and ete of all these that are in these different categories, one is the subject and then the object. So listen carefully. Subject, verb, and object. That's grammar. There's Sanskrit terms and there's rules with the Sanskrit terms. There's rules with Sanskrit terms. And if the subject is first and then the object comes later, the other way around. The object and then subject. So let's take a sample sentence. What's a good sample sentence? Biden is the president. So the president, the person defines what happens during the presidency, not the other way around. It doesn't say the president, that it would mean something else. The president is, fill in his name. Maybe there's going to be another guy after him. Looks like it. But, Obama or, our friend, Donald, is the president or was the president. So the person, so you go this way. There's a subject and then the verb and then the predicate that or the object that's identifying, modifying, or giving a description of, the balloon is red. So the balloon is one thing, and then the qualities that define or give you some understanding about the balloon is in the other part. So this subject-object is important, and in relationship, it's oscillating, or it moves back and forth. That's when there's a genuine relationship. So let's go back. When there's some exchange between the two, and the two positions are exchanged back and forth, and there's some common agreed currency or value that's being exchanged by both, then you have a relationship, and if otherwise, it's dysfunctional. And we know what dysfunctional relationships are like. Alternating roles means that the person's in a relationship at are at times the object and then at other times the subject, like in a discussion. Easy. Emotion is that commodity or the currency that's the exchange that people value. And it comes from the exchange. There's some emotion. Now, what's going on here is I'm trying to explain to an audience that doesn't know what Rupa Goswami's teachings are to understand Rupa Goswami's teachings in simple terms. Okay. So now, emotion is the primary commodity in that exchange, and it's a consequence of which is action. You act upon that emotion. So there are 5 principal kinds of rasas, and emotions are of 3 kinds. So, listen. Primary emotion is love. And then there's 7 secondary emotions. Amazement, humor, chivalry, compassion, fury, fear, and dread. Now this is Rupa Goswami's teachings, and devotees may not know the Sanskrit term, but you know the concept. The primary emotion breaks down into 5, and then there's 7 more. Anybody lost so far, or you're with me? Want me to go over anything? Because I can do that. Okay, so this is a real simplified presentation of Rupa Goswami's teachings about relationships. So the currency is that exchange is an exchange of emotion. It's something that both persons value. They accept the value, and they exchange emotion back and forth. The primary emotion is love, and there's 7 secondary emotions, 7 secondary rasas. The primary emotions are 5 in number. And you see from the image, if you're sitting in the back, you can look at that screen up there because it'll help you, because I'm going to make reference to what's on the screen. In the lower left corner, you see some students sitting at their desk in school, in a classroom. So let's just say like this. When you sign up for classes or go into your first class, it's neutrality. You're just sitting there attending to the class. And after some time, supposing one of the students drops their pen on the floor, and they didn't see it. Another person sees the pen dropped on the floor, they pick up their pen, say, "Here's your pen." "Oh, thank you very much." That's moved in from neutrality to some service. And then after some time, it's not just service, but they say, "Let's go have lunch together." They go and they establish a friendship, not just some neutral service, simple service. And from that friendship, it can move into the next kind. It could become a conjugal relationship, or it could be, before that, you look after the other person like like an older brother might look after a younger brother, kind of thing. When there's somebody's bullying them, and you stand up for them, and you're acting to protect them. Supposing something like that happens. So relationships move one to the next. The primary relationships, the primary emotion that's exchanged with love. So the image is meant to show neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. Very simple illustrations. Now we're going to go back to that little invisible baby in the baby crib. So a loving relationship, it's a person who loves, the loving person is the subject, the object who they love is the object. So now here we go. Here's these 5 rasas again. That what's exchanged is love, and there's characteristics that gradually increase. Here's how they gradually increase. Neutrality, it starts with passive, like the student sitting there in a classroom. And it may move to feeling inspired. even up to the point of reverential regard for another person. Who knows? Maybe the person in front of me is the son or the daughter of some celebrity, and I think, wow. But it's still passive. Then, when you add some service to that neutrality, then it moves into the next category of loving exchange, where it's servitude. And then to that servitude, supposing you add some confidential intimacy, like shown in that middle image of someone with their hand on the shoulder of another person in friendship. Plus the other things are there. So something is added each time. And to that friendship, supposing there's this idea of maintaining or taking care of or giving protection to, plus all the previous. So that's a parental kind of affection or love. And when there's offering of everything, that's conjugal love. So we have these 5 kinds of loving relationships identified in Rupa Goswami's teachings. Now we're going to come to something that's a little maybe controversial, or people aren't going to like hearing it. Is there such a thing as love that's pure and love that's not pure? So if there is love that's not pure or impure, then what is it made up of? And if you don't know who the other person is, and you don't know who you are, and you're trying to have a relationship, good luck. But that's in the category of impure. And supposing you know, or worse, you have the wrong idea of subject and object. And so the person is thought of as their body or their mind, and then you have some relationship, but it's temporary for sure, and it's impure because you don't really know who you are, and you really don't know who they are, and you want to have a relationship. So it's dysfunctional, or we're calling it for this presentation's purpose, impure. And where do we get this impure understanding of ourselves and others? It comes from how we're educated. Prabhupada always speaks of it's, the responsibility is there with the leaders, starting with parents, and then the teachers and educators and the government people. They're the ones that are supposed to be leading and training people in understanding who you are. But supposing somebody doesn't get that, they get just the opposite, some other understanding. Somebody forwarded to me this little, I didn't look at it for too long because I became a little disturbed. But there's some person that's on a tour around the world saying, now that it's done with anyone that's speaking anything to do with a soul or spark of life is it's over now because the evidence is so compelling, or something like that. And they're going around, and they must have people who are listening to them. Also, somebody may not be, those educators may not be so blatant about it, but essentially, largely, certainly, science is required, course of study. And anyway, having religion in textbooks, there's laws. The separation of church and state, you can't do that. You can have a course over there and call it religious studies, that's okay. That's for people that like, but the fundamental understanding is something that has nothing to do with the soul, and nothing to do with the connection to the soul with the source of all souls and source of all things. It's not a concept that people live with. For example, supposing there's some young people here, you probably, one of these days, if you haven't already gotten your driver's license. So what do you do to get a driver's license? You have to say who you are. Or you may get a passport to go travel here and there. So what do you do to identify yourself? This is my name. This is my address. This is my parents' name. This is my fingerprints. This is my height. this is the color of my eyes, now with facial recognition, and etc. And that's me. You fill in an application for college, the same questions, because that's who you are. It's not, who you are, but it's who you are. It's the society reinforces again and again and again and again. Our educational institutions reinforce it again and again and again. And you're kind of like out of step if you don't hold that point of view. So those of us that are devotees, we comply with the rules, but we're also encouraged to know who we are so that we can have real relationships. And we're going to get there with this presentation. And modern consumer society promotes the misconception or wrong knowledge of who we are and who other people are, and how to have a relationship with them. And so this is, it sounds judgmental, but it's actually just making a distinction between this and that. A right, quote unquote, knowledge is to know who the subject and the object are. We're not the body, and our identity is we're the servant of the Supreme, and then we can engage with other people in a relationship that has, as its commodity of exchange, pure and eternal love. And where do we get that knowledge? We have to have teachers that have wisdom, and wisdom literature helps us get that knowledge. And wise people that have this knowledge and can impart this knowledge and live by this knowledge, it's not an ism that's being Rupa Goswami is speaking about. This ism as opposed to that ism. It's just identity of who we truly are. So now a little summary. Pure relationship results from knowledge of spiritual identity. Impure relationship results from ignorance of it. Really simple so far. Okay, so somebody might say, well, is pure love to be had from some outside source? No. Knowledge of our identity awakens the pure love within us. So it's the knowledge of who we are is intrinsic, yet it's covered. And it needs to be uncovered or awakened. And then when it's awakened, which is already inside us, then there's the opportunity or possibility of a loving relationship. And when we're covered, knowledge that excludes our identity, everything becomes impure. So it's already within us, intrinsic within us, that knowing who we are and knowing who others are and relating accordingly. Now, some argue that impure relationships, that's relationships based upon the body, can work. And they'll take a look at some statistics. Last year in the United States, there were roughly 2,153 marriages. 2,153,000 marriages. That's better. 2,153,000 marriages. 35% of new marriages are likely to end in divorce within 15 years. And that means, 3.5 divorces within 1 year out of 1,000 marriages. So it's not like, hey, I've got a great idea. What's that? Let's get married, and then after 15 years, let's get divorced. Hey, that's a great idea. Let's do that one. When people get married, that's not how they're thinking. But it's a pretty large statistic. 35% end up like that in the United States. Statistics in other countries are likely different than the United States. Here's abortion statistics. 4,309,000 live births, nearly 1 million spontaneous abortions, and over 1 million procured abortions. So 28 procured abortions per every 100. Hey, I've got a great idea. What's that? Let's have some children, and then before they're born, we'll kill them. Hey, that's a great idea. Let's do that. That's not how it's planned, but that's the statistic. So it's not so healthy, not so wholesome, it's not so pure. Crimes in the United States, recognized crimes. That's a pretty detailed number. 3,858 crimes every day in the U.S. And that's against persons, and then against property is a much bigger number. Almost 27,000 crimes against property every day. Hey, I've got a great idea. What's that? Let's go do harm to other people and steal their property, and we'll add to that statistic. That sounds like a great idea. Sure, let's do that. Or there's a couple colleges that I visited this past year. It wasn't much visiting of colleges because of pandemic, but last year, 2 colleges, they had a whole month, I think it was, dedicated to relationship violence, or I forget what they called it, dating violence or something like that. A whole month, because the statistic was so high. So here's a data from the July last year issue of the Archives of Pediatrics. All forms of relationship violence are prevalent among male and female college students. Almost half of the students had experienced relationship violence at some point in their lives. More than 1/3 had experienced violence before college, and 1/4 had experienced violence during college. So it's a problem. It's a problem. Hey, I got a great idea. Hey, what's that? Let's have a relationship, and then we'll have some violence together. Hey, that's a great idea. That's not how relationships start, but it happens. It happens. Summary. The exchange of love between one temporary limited body and another temporary limited body ends in temporary limited love. Very simple. And conversely, the exchange of love between one eternal, powerful soul and another eternal, powerful soul results in lasting, powerful relationship. And those that have that soul-to-soul understanding, they respect differences. Not easy when you identify with the body, because then you got differences. But if you see the soul, then you can respect differences on the material platform, while recognizing, of course, souls are also individual. You can have a respectful, loving relationship with others if you're respecting differences. A little sharing. The first time I heard Srila Prabhupada give a lecture, I couldn't understand, because his accent, at least from my ear, it was his accent. For him, it was just speaking English, but I couldn't understand. So I heard a recording of it about 6-7 times, and it's still with me. And the example Prabhupada was giving, he made a motion like this, and he said, imagine that there's in the middle of the floor, there's a pond. We gave everybody in the room a pebble and ask you, please throw your pebble into the pond. What will happen? A little splash, and then concentric circles expand out, and it's very nice. Okay, very good. Now someone else, you throw your pebble into the water, and what happens? A little splash, concentric circles spanned out until they hit the concentric circles of the other pebble, and then there's a clash. And then we say, okay, now on the count of 3, he didn't do this. Everybody in the room throw your pebble into the pond. And what happens? It's chaos. Everything's disrupted. And that's called material life. The pebble representing our individuality, our uniqueness. And when we have a situation where there is not a spiritual center, then you have conflicts between one person or the person. It's inevitable. And then what Prabhupada said, supposing we give everybody their pebble back again, and we make one center and everybody places their pebble on that same center, what happens? The concentric circles magnify one another and there's no clash. But the individuality is preserved. And that's Krishna consciousness. That was a very simple explanation. Very simple. And so when we don't have a spiritual, that there are situations where people don't have, they arbitrarily create a spiritual center. I had that experience with, when I was in college, communal living was popular. It started to become a little more popular again for some reason. But there was a time when, just as just an anecdote to mix up the evening here. Once upon a time, I was riding in a train. I was going from New York City to our farm in mid-Pennsylvania, Gitanagari. You know where that place, some of you know where that place is. So to get from New York to Gitanagari, the end of the stop was Lewistown, which is very near Harrisburg. So the train pulled into the station in Philadelphia. Some of the cars of that train were decoupled and went to another place, and another bunch of cars were added to our train, and off we go to, further west. And so I was sitting when an elderly man came and sat near me, and he was a talkative type. I was busy doing my thing, and he was, wanting to talk. So, I was trying to be polite. So I just listened. And he was talking about, he was talking about how when he was young, he asked, "Where are you going?" I said, "To a farm community in mid-Pennsylvania." And then he went off, "Oh, I lived in a farm community. It was in West Virginia." And I thought, which one? And so he gave me the name, and he said, it was really nice. So he said, but he wanted to talk. So he said, "But I left here for some time. Why'd you leave?" He said, "Well, the people." There's some people coming late. That's what's going on right now. So we're asking those that are early to move forward, and those that are somewhere in the middle come a little forward, and those in the back can stay right where you are. Okay. So he went and stayed in an ashram in West Virginia. And said, so then what happened? Well, the ashram broke apart because after some time, there was this group and there was that group and the other group. Although there was original vision for the ashram, there was division about what the vision for the ashram really was, and it broke up. So then what'd you do? So I went to stay in an ashram in New York City. I learned yoga and became a yoga teacher. Okay, great. So then what happened? So now I'm visiting a friend that lives out there in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to see my friend. So I thought, this is exactly what Prabhupada said. So I said, I'm going also to an ashram, but it's been there for like 50 years, or 45 years, or whatever the number of years is, it's been there. And, it started with a vision, and the vision is still there. And the reason it's still there is because the center is the Supreme Person. And that's the center that holds everything together. I said, oh, tell me where the place is. So I gave her the address of Gitanagari. And let's see. Maybe he'll go there, maybe he won't go there. But when there is not a spiritual center, guaranteed there's going to be conflict. So that the solution that Prabhupada gave was, you just have a common center, and the common center is Krishna. And then people can preserve their individuality, that's just fine. And the harmony comes by accepting that common purpose, common center. Now, even we have this experience in our, communities around ISKCON, there's sometimes conflicts. Sometimes conflicts. Now, how do you deal with that when there's sometimes conflicts? One of our devotees studied together with Marshall Rosenberg. Some of you know who Marshall Rosenberg is. This is a picture of Marshall Rosenberg and how he taught nonviolent communication. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. You'll find it, chapter 17, text 15. The principle of nonviolent communication is right there. And he uses puppets to explain what nonviolent communication is. And the nonviolent one is the giraffe, and the violent one is a jackal. So he would say, jackal speak. And he said he picked the giraffe because although the body of the giraffe is large, his heart proportionately is really big compared to the rest of his body. That's why he picked the giraffe. So he would teach by this little method the principle and then the practical application of the principle of nonviolent communication. And there's some opportunity to learn about how that works, how that could work, how it does work in a devotee lifestyle. There's a seminar noisy stairs. There's a seminar. Come on in. There's a seminar being taught on empathic communication. Just a little blurb. Bir Krishna Maharaj studied with Marshall Rosenberg for a bunch of time, like hours and hours and hours, and seminars and seminars and seminars, with the intention of learning the principles and then Krishnaizing the principles for a devotee audience. So he then changed the name from nonviolent communication to empathic communication, wrote a little book, and I invited him to come to Gita Nagari with myself twice to have seminars on nonviolent communication or empathic communication. Some people learned it and took a course from him, a special tutorial course, and they're now teaching it. So if you're interested, I don't know where to direct you, Bir Krishna Maharaj, or some of you may know Sri Radhika in the Chicago area. She's conducting these seminars. Currently, she's conducting it with the Chinese devotees. They translated the book into Chinese, and she's teaching it like a 12-part or whatever it is seminar on how they can get along better. Or when they have differences, how to resolve those differences in a empathic way. It's interesting teaching. So it helps in relationships that you have a something that you share, you value together. That's the commodity of exchange in those relationships. And you learn how to communicate nicely, empathically with one another. Here's the austerity of speech message. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. Now, I made some mention of a TED Talk that somebody forwarded to me, and this is one of the key slides from the TED Talk, where compassion is an essential quality of a devotee, or quality of the soul, and this TED Talk person, his name is at the bottom left, so if you're interested, you can check it out. He explains he was an employee of Apple, an engineer employee of Apple, and now he's hired, or when he gave this TED Talk, was hired to create curriculum to teach the people at Apple how to be compassionate because they found it was profitable. And he gives examples. Compassion has these three parts. You ready? I've another time there's a whole seminar on compassion, but these three parts is an affective part, it's something that you feel. A cognitive part, something that you understand. And a motivational part, something you want to do. You feel something, you understand something, you want to do something. Those are the three parts. And he then, in this TED Talk, gives a comparison with a book, the From Good to Great, by Jim Collins, who's a sociologist. Some of you are nodding. He was commissioned, he got, some maintenance fund to conduct a study of Fortune 500 companies, and study those that are good, and some of those that are good became great, and what made the difference between good to great. So that's the title of his book, Good to Great. And his conclusion was, those that became great was when the CEO had these two main characteristics, humility and ambition. And the humility part, normally you think of a CEO, you don't think of somebody that's humble. I don't. You think of somebody that's aggressive. And they, use that word all the time. So, humble means that he would create teams, and he would actually take input, proactively seek input from his team members. If he had that idea and the team members had this idea, he would listen carefully and modify that idea that would more, because good ideas would come from good, smart people. You surround yourself with smart people, and they're going to think differently. But the great CEOs were persons that could take input from others and redirect their own idea, their own plan accordingly. We all know what's the person who thinks they're the smartest person in the room in a group of people, and they're really hard to work with. And that's not great. But great is where this quality of humility is there, and then his explanation of ambition. There's some details, but the ambition is they really want to serve other people. Gave examples of computer companies that when computers started going kaboom, and which some computers really became really successful. And it's when their interest wasn't in the profit margin, their interest was in something that would be really useful for their customers, really help the value of their life. So there's so many anecdotal things to say about this, and there isn't time. But relationships where the subject and object have a correct understanding of one another, compassion is naturally, because it's a quality of the soul, it's naturally an element, one feeling compassion for the other. Just like this example at the very beginning. Rupa Goswami was honored especially by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I mean, he honored Sanatana Goswami, but he especially honored Rupa. And Rupa Goswami was honoring his brother. And there were many persons honoring Rupa Goswami, and he was honoring his brother and Lord Chaitanya. It says Vaishnava characteristics have this humility and the other qualities, compassion, in a very special way. Then you can have relationships that are of the nature of loving relationships. Here's a little interesting item. Someone who is a marriage counselor by profession, devotee, marriage counselor by profession, without the details. There was a relationship issue between one couple, and they tried marriage counseling, this, that, and the other thing, and then I referred them to someone, and all of a sudden, their relationship became nice. So I said, "What magic did you do?" And they said, "Well, I just showed them this." And so listen carefully. If you have relationship issues, not just in marriage, but with any relationship issues, it's interesting. So this is Mother Teresa. It was taken from her wall in an orphanage in Calcutta. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of being selfish, having ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends, and some genuine enemies succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people will deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. Mother Teresa. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Here's the punchline. Oh, no, that's not the punchline. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. Here's the punchline. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Mother Teresa, Uvacha. And the last is a little, a nice devotee. If you'd like this image, sir, if you'd like this image, I can make it available to Prem Kishore, and he can circulate it however he circulates things. Is that, I mean, because besides you, others may. It's nice. Very nice. Very good. This is a little video that was created by someone who I requested make a video that goes along with this topic of relationships. So I hope the sound is going to work properly, and if not, we'll try to fix it. Should I see the screen? That's the end. So I wanted to do this for two reasons. Obviously, one is the content, but another major is something that I was presenting yesterday. I wanted to do the same again today. There are ways to take our very elevated transcendental teachings and make them relatable to audiences that aren't there yet. They don't yet have affinity for reading Prabhupada's books or the teachings of disciplic succession or things like that. And there are ways, when you find something that is meaningful to others, to relate that which is meaningful to them to the knowledge of transcendence. And it's a little bridge that is nice bridge, and it helps them get a sense of what these transcendental teachings are about, and help them get some enthusiasm to go through it more carefully. It's a big part of our mandate. Our Krishna consciousness mandate is very simple: receive and give. Receive mercy and give mercy. Don't just receive mercy and give mercy. You give mercy in the form of extending the mercy that you've received to others, especially in a way that is attractive to them and palatable. I just today, I got an invitation to go to a vegan feast in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm going to be visiting Alachua next month, and beginning part of June. And so that, the person that's their book distribution organizer was filling out a form, and they fill out the form. The person who was accepting the form, the receiver, knows the devotees. In addition to having your book display, you can do this and you can do that, and you can sell food, and you can have a speaker, and you can bring your music, bring the whole thing. So now I'm going to be going to speak at a vegan feast or festival or something, and I get a chance to speak the message of Krishna consciousness. Now, it will be my privilege and challenge to give that message to people where it's meaningful to them. Now, it doesn't require a formal speaking platform. It like our Hare Krishna movement is meant for receiving and giving, and the receiving and giving ideally is to everybody, without discrimination about this or that or the other. Now look around the room, and you'll see lots of non-resident Indians in the room, or children that grew up in America but are from the families of non-resident Indians that are living in America, which is just fine. Then there's lots of other nationalities. I was noting as we were going along the roadway, I didn't see any signs in Spanish. I didn't see any signs in Hindi, but I saw a bunch of signs in Chinese and Korean. Now, there's a reason. There must be a reason, because proportionately, anyway, without going into it so much, there's audiences that we're not reaching. And there's ways to reach audiences that we're not reaching, and you have to make, the message relatable to the audience you want to reach. And it's doable. You have to be a little, you have to have a strategy. You have to be a little thoughtful and creative and out of the box. And, especially, I'm, looking around the room, and I would say especially the younger generation persons know how to relate to younger generation persons better than the older generation persons. But older generations persons can also be part of that effort, because that's what's going to make Krishna consciousness endure over, the next 50 years. Supposing we don't do that, what's it going to be? Close your eyes and imagine we don't effectively reach the other than the non-resident Indian population in North America. What's it going to be? So, we want to do what Prabhupada wanted. That's our life. And he wanted to reach that portion of the population that right now we're not being so good at reaching, not effective at reaching. But there are ways. And, I chose this particular topic, again, as I did yesterday evening, because there are ways to take the transcendental teachings and make them attractive to people that don't know transcendental teachings. They don't know the goal of life. Nathe vidu svartakatimi Vishnu. They don't know. And there's a way to make it attractive and, relatable and palatable. And it just takes some creativity and a little elbow grease. And it's doable. And who's going to do it? I'm looking around the room, and my message to all of you is you're going to do it. If it's going to get done, it's going to be the people that are in this room. The state of New Jersey has a lot of people that are other than the non-resident Indian people. And who is going to bring Krishna consciousness to them? My answer to that question is you are. Or if you aren't, then it's not going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, we're doing something, but it's not sufficient to fulfill the mission of our founder Acharya. He was Indian. Look what he did. And he was very creative in doing what he did. From the biographies how creative he was. So, I'm encouraging, showing by this one example, and the other evening another example, and there's many, many, many other ways to reach the hearts and the minds of all kinds of people outside of the people that are, the non-resident Indians in the room here. It's important for us. I'm sorry I'm repeating this message a number of times, because repetition sometimes then carries some weight. I hope you're feeling a little weight, because that's the intention. Get creative and figure out ways to do it. There's ways to do it. And it's our spiritual master, it's our founder Acharya's mission. There's ways. And don't wait for someone else to do it. Figure out and work together with others that have that spirit, and it's doable. Definitely doable. One of the persons who attended this past weekend in Gitanagri, there were 100 people that maybe 5 or 6 were from Indian background, and everybody else was something else. So one of the persons that was a presenter went back to Chicago with his wife and 2 children, his family man, and he had a program at Northwestern University. And because it's been pandemic, the thing was shut down. But there were 6 people, and they were from all different backgrounds. They're just starting. One from Ethiopia, one from the Orient, one American, one, everybody from a different country. And of course, it's in a university like Northwestern, excuse me. There's a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. So someone from Russia. So figure out ways that match your skill set, and give it a go. A universal way, prasadam distribution. Everybody likes prasadam. Figure out a way to distribute prasadam to people, and it'll be spiritually beneficial. Anyway, I'll get off the soapbox and just go back to the topic. I chose this topic to just give one example out of so many possible examples of taking something that's very traditional within our teachings and make it available to others. So please consider how you can do that. Please consider how you can do that. Any comments or questions on this evening's presentation, or whatever you'd like? We have a portable microphone, and there's a question over here. You have a microphone. Look at that. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very, very much. This was really, really touching to not only a new person, but even to practicing devotees. Maharaj, I was, since the past some time, I've been trying to internalize what you said. Srila Prabhupada's mission and instruction is our life. And that sounds really simple, but I've been trying to really tell myself that every day. And I've been feeling it really spontaneously that
Good.
Without Srila Prabhupada, I'd be nowhere. Right? So I was wondering, Maharaj, how can we learn to get out of our comfort zone?
How to? Sadhusanga. Associate with people that live out of their comfort zone, and you'll find it very comfortable to be out of your comfort zone by being with them, because they're comfortable being out of their comfort zone.
Maharaj,
when you understand, there's a purpose to your life, and the purpose to your life is not where you are yet, but there's that purpose. So there's a tendency to be comfortable. That's the comfort zone, and I don't want to change anything. It's like this little Albert Einstein statement. We can't solve problems with the same way of thinking that created the problems. So our existence, we need to undergo some change, and it's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. I mean, you're a teenager. You know what being uncomfortable is like, because it's a change to move from childhood to moving into adulthood. The transition is uncomfortable. So you don't have a choice. You're a teenager, so you just have to live with it. But so to get out of your comfort zone and have a goal that's not where you are yet, be very clear what the goal is, and then steps that can take you to that goal. That's how you do it. You want to reach a goal. You have a mission to your life. If you don't have a mission to your life, you're going to try to stay comfortable. It's not comfortable staying comfortable, because things keep changing. And then you feel uncomfortable because things are changing. So have a mission. And don't just, pick one out of the air. Look inside and what's your higher purpose? Not just you get an A in your Bhakti Shastri exam by checking that box, but something that's you, meaningful to you. And you pursue that. One of our members from the midday program asked a question, private question afterwards, another one of these how-to, and you should, so find something, same answer. It's not just because you're a teenager, it's for every one of us. Something that's meaningful to you. You don't have to be perfect at everything. Something that's meaningful to you, and it's something that from your heart you feel is meaningful to offer to Krishna and the society of Vaishnavas. And do that. And do it nicely. Develop it. And you'll find that it'll start to unfold, and it becomes many other things. It becomes a multifaceted something. And, from that skill comes another skill, comes another opportunity, life unfolds. But have some kind of an idea of even if it's not the ultimate, it's, something that's an interim mission or purpose of life. I've been saying this during all of these classes in different ways, but it's the same message. The Viktor Frankl message is that message: a purpose to life, a purpose to your being. And what is that? And when you carry that in your heart, then it's easy to get out of your comfort zone. And you don't have it, and you're going to want to stay comfortable. Anyone else in the room here? Some thoughts you'd like to share? She got something else.
If it's all right, I'll ask one more.
Okay. Thank you for pausing, and thank you for asking again. Something.
Maharaj, about relationships. I was seeing that the 5 relationships are very cumulative, like they have features of the previous ones.
Yes.
So I was wondering, for servitude, I think all relationships do have like a tinge of servitude. Am I right?
That's you're just making a statement.
I'm just confirming my idea.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is quoted by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami as saying that he descended into this world to distribute spontaneous love in the 4 primary relationships, which means he was excluding shanta, or neutrality. So constitutionally, we know this. The constitution of all souls, including those in Shantarasa, the constitution of all souls is service to the Supreme. So it would follow that even in Shantarasa, there's some kind of service. There's pleasure of the Supreme in being, in this neutral awe and veneration position, because it's for the pleasure of the Supreme. So the dasya is more active than passive. Okay? I'm a yogi. I know how to be very patient. So I'll just sit here and be patient until somebody else wants to contribute something. Yes.
Mother Teresa slide. So the essence of that slide is, if it's between me and God anyway.
Yeah,
so,
you like that one.
Yeah. So that should be our motivation to do all the above, to please the Lord.
Yes, that's it.
That's the essence.
Yeah, all those things, do it anyways, even if, so, because it's not between you and them, it's between you and God anyways. Now, it doesn't mean you discount everybody and you become like, a stoic. You don't care about anything, about anybody. It's just about you and God. But that the core, the thread that holds everything together is your relationship with God and His relationship with you, accepting your service. And now your service is in relation to others or relation to the world. And you do those things in that consciousness, because in the final analysis, that's what it's about. And then you can have wholesome spiritual relationships. There was a section to this presentation that I left out, but because it was for a college, and I could put it in again if I. There's a non-sectarian little 4 or 5 slides. It doesn't matter whether it's this ism or that ism. It's the relationship of the Supreme through the association of persons that are in their relationship with the Supreme. And so it's a non-sectarian message of this loving relationship. But then you have to be with people that are connected to scriptures that are very clear about who you are, who they are, and who the Supreme is. And the clearer that is, the more likely you're going to get to a loving relationship between two persons. That was the section that was not included because it was for a university. Yes.
Maharaj, you said there is service in Shantarasa. You can please locate that. How is there service in Shantarasa?
Well, supposing you're a rock and Krishna sits on you. You may melt or steps on you or something. So that's the Shantarasa, the earth. There's not much that I'm aware of in scripture that speaks of Shanta having an element of Dasya. I don't know, I haven't come across any scriptural description that says in Shanta there's an element of Dasya. However, the scripture does say the constitutional position of every living entity is the eternal servant of the Supreme. So within that dasya, within the shanta, the awe and veneration feature is some service is there. It's just not active, it's passive. Same thing as I said earlier. Is that, you're looking at your phone. Is there anything I can do further on this question?
I'm making a note.
Oh, okay. 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 You have something on this? You got two microphones.
Can we think all the objects like what we see in the material world, like which are not conscious? So in the spiritual world, they're conscious and they're all in they're all in Shantarasa. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Everything is conscious. Sat, Chit, and Ananda. The Chit is there.
So all the paraphernalia that Lord uses, they're all in Shantarasa.
It's quite inconceivable, but that's the reality.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
We are reading the Krishna book. Krishna book, Prabhupada talks about Lord Balaram. Krishna is speaking to Lord Balaram. See, Balaram, all the plants, all the bees, everybody is want to serve you. They are bending down, they are offering flowers, they are making the sound, they are making everything very auspicious and very nice for your appearance, for your walking on this path. So that's a kind of a passive service, which I thought Sri Prabhupada is making that point in that Krishna book. I don't remember the exact chapter, but I vividly remember that.
Some of those examples are directly Dasya, but some of them are examples of Shanta.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. One question.
Yes, I'm listening.
On the relationship to be centered onto Krishna, like the example which we have shown in one of the slide of the concentric circles. When it is centered around Krishna, it will be all supportive. At the other slide following was love is pure and also impure. I couldn't connect when love as an impure one. Oh.
Impure was a manner of speech. And the manner of speech is saying, when I don't know who I am and I don't know who the other person is, it's impure relationship or dysfunctional relationship. That was the implication by using that language, impure. Is I don't know who I am, I don't know who they are, I'm trying to have a relationship. And that's the case. We don't understand one another, not just the package of the body and the mind, but identify the person as soul. I'm listening to a lecture this morning, 1968, Prabhupada in Los Angeles, and it was the end of the class, and it was questions and answers, and one girl was saying to Prabhupada, "Why do you say that you're impure?" And Prabhupada said, what do you mean when you say, Swamiji, you're not impure? And she said, well, because you see each of us as soul. So how could you say that you're impure? And Prabhupada chuckled, said, that's all right. He didn't want to get into it. But he was confirming, in one manner, in a humble manner, that is the standard of purity. When we, on the material side, we discern, this is this, and that's that, and the other thing is the other thing. We can, the intelligence doesn't get shut off. We can see what's what. And we can see, that's the coverings, the modes of nature and the diversities in this world. And then we can also, the pure devotee, can see the spirit soul and relate, conscious of both. Conscious of both. It's wonderful. Pure devotion is wonderful. So that was the meaning. Impure means you really don't know who you are. You really don't know who the other person is, and you're having a desire, a natural, social desire to have a relationship, and that's just dysfunctional or impure. It's incomplete. It's okay. There's some emotion. There's some exchange. That's why people have relationships, because they want that, but it ends up being messy. So here's the slides that I left out of the college presentation. You can, because we don't have a lot of hands up here. I'm just going to go through this, and we'll call it an evening. There's a hidden ingredient for pure relationships to function. That's the inclusion of God. You can see the puzzle pieces. They're all the same color, and there's one puzzle piece that's of a different color. So what's that hidden ingredient? The hidden ingredient is include God in the formula of a loving relationship. Is it not possible to exclude God from pure relationships among men? No, because he's already there. And how can you exclude God and still have a pure relationship? How you can have a proper understanding of what's what, excluding God? So now here are these 5 relationships again. How does a complete relationship with God work? A complete relationship with God involved work. Answer. If persons, that's us, the subject, make God the supreme master and the common object of their love and servitude, then any of the 5 relationships means lasting, rewarding, loving relationship. And our classic example is watering the root of a tree. And here's this other example. The relationship circle. God's at the center. This is the drop of water example, just in a different graphic. God's at the center. There's our spiritual guides surrounding, then their family and extended family and society, etc. Then our 2 examples. Does it matter what religion we profess for relationships to work? No. They just have to have certain fundamentals. A clear concept, we're soul, not the body. How much did Prabhupada speak on that one? The body is but a dress of the soul. God is the supreme person. And as the creator, he's the master. And we are his servants. So this is the summary slide. This brief analysis of relationships is based on Bhagavad Gita and has been offered with the idea of helping us overcome sectarian, gender, racial, ethnic, and other prejudices, an effort to help us love each other and thus establish real relationships in our lives. That's the part that I left out for the college audience. Okay, I think we're going to end there. And I brought with me some Mahaprasadam, like I like to do. And I think I'm going to run out, which is just fine, so we'll have to have some more for tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.